Hey there guys, welcome back to BackPocketGameReviews, and well, today we're going to talk about your guys' favorite topic, because you request that I do these videos a lot. We're going to talk about what's killing GameStop. So there are a lot of different things that are currently killing GameStop, and for those of you who don't believe me that they're kind of in a lot of pain at the moment, their stock has kind of been a downward stumble, and they're currently also looking at selling the company. So yeah, that's not signs of a strong company that's doing wonderful things. Those are all things that are typically indicative of, hey, we're not doing well as a business. But they are currently reaching out into a couple of new avenues. Apparently, certain GameStops, a very, very, very limited few of GameStops, currently have tables where you can play Magic the Gathering. They do not have DCI ranking systems or anything like that, so they're not hosting Friday Night Magic. But you can rent a table in a GameStop and play some cards. I only know of one GameStop in my district that is currently doing that. So yeah, that's the thing. I don't really know how that's making them much money at the moment. But then they're also going to be starting to sell comic books. Well, a lot of you might already know this, but Magic the Gathering is still a relatively popular thing, and Hearthstone has done some damage to that as a market. Hearthstone has made it so you don't have to go sit around some really awkward people sometimes at Friday Night Magic, and you don't really have to interact with the person you're playing with. So even Magic the Gathering has lost some of the steam that it used to have. Our comic books, even, digital has hurt them a little. Not as much as other industries, because people that typically like comic books typically like to actually have the book in their hands. But when you think of how a comic book company normally runs, I don't really think GameStop can function in that capacity or really meet the demands of comic nerds. The amount of space they would need for all of the comics that they would be selling is astronomical. And half their stores are already toys at this point. Some games, I guess. But when you think about it, those are two industries that still aren't quite where they used to be. And then you look at how they bought out ThinkGeek. ThinkGeek did do really well when it sold collectibles and stuff like that, but GameStop as a whole has even started venturing more into the toy landscape. Again, that's another industry that's pretty much dominated by Amazon. So I wouldn't say that it's necessarily the industries they're getting into, and I wouldn't even necessarily always blame Amazon in every instance for where GameStop is failing. But they make some interesting decisions on where they decide to branch out to. Now, I can get behind them getting into comics or even getting into Friday Night Magic a lot more than I can get behind them starting to sell iPhones. I still always will think that cell phones and prepaid phones was the dumbest move that GameStop ever made. Because, well, that's kind of what Radio Shack did, and look how well it worked out for Radio Shack. I would probably still say the biggest killer, the biggest single-handed killer of GameStop right now is probably going to be the digital game space. And I know a lot of you out there are going to disagree with me. You're going to say I'm absolutely ridiculous for thinking that. How so, when over 50% of the games that are sold these days are digital? We're at a point of where digital sales shit on any sale that GameStop offers. I mean literally any sale. When you look at PlayStation's flash sales or even some of Xbox's random sales, I picked up the Uncharted series, the entire collection, for $5. I traded my copy into GameStop because they paid more for the copy and were selling it for like quadruple that used. So I got a free digital copy with a couple extra dollars on top of that to go spend on other digital games. And there are times where I do that, where I will wait until a bunch of the games I own are available digitally and my copies are worth more physically to GameStop. I'll sell them, buy them used, and buy some other games I don't already own with the money. Or buy skins in Rainbow Six Siege because I have a serious problem. But aside from my serious problem there, you can also look at how there was a point in time where people were very against digital downloads. But now you can look at games like Fortnite where microtransactions have become so common, or even like with Overwatch, for all these cosmetic skins, that most people now feel comfortable making a digital purchase on these marketplaces. So it's starting to become more and more acceptable and something that's more and more done. And now I can preload my games and have them ready to go right at midnight. We're getting to a point of where digital is becoming overwhelmingly convenient. External storage is a piece of cake to hook up. I can plug in an external drive to one of my systems and it's ready to go. Or if I'm a PC gamer, I'm already using Steam. There's no damn reason to walk into a GameStop for a PC gamer. So they've already lost one giant market because PC makes up the largest chunk of the gaming market as a whole. But then when you look at either one of the consoles, they're now running sales that are so competitive to what GameStop offers, it's almost hard to really want to buy a physical game, at least for me. Again, I understand some of you like to collect, some of you like to have the look of all of those games. I'm pretty much starting to go all digital with most of my purchases. Even with movies, I'm starting to go all digital. I don't have to worry about the kids scratching a disc. I don't have to worry about a disc getting lost. If I buy a game on my PlayStation down here, my son can use that same game that I purchased upstairs, and we can play at the same time with me owning one copy of the game. Whereas opposed to if I wanted to do that owning only physical, I would have to buy multiple copies of that game. So there are pros and cons to digital, and I really, really think digital's coming up quickly on just replacing physical for the majority of most of gamers at this point. And I would probably say that's going to be the biggest thorn in GameStop's side. And I know a lot of you are like, oh, well, GameStop sells digital games. I can go there and I can buy my game digitally. I still, A, had to go into a retailer, and B, GameStop makes pennies on a digital sale. Pennies. So, probably going to be the final nail in their coffin. It's sort of like when Blockbuster probably instantly realized they should kick themselves in the ass for not buying Netflix, because they could have. That offer was made. They turned it down. I'm sure to some degree that that's probably regrettable. But even in this day and age, obviously still some people will always probably prefer to have a physical copy. And like, for example, with my Switch, yeah, there's certain games I prefer to have a physical copy of because none of the data actually stores on the Switch for some of those. Now, if you look at any of the other systems, like let's say I buy NBA 2K for PlayStation, it's going to install all the data off of the disc. I'm going to have to deal with it either way. It's still going to take up the same amount of storage space either way. So, I don't know, it's really odd to see how we're starting to transition to that whole market. And even when you look at a lot of the stuff too that used to bring me to physical games, like why I used to like them, steelbooks. I hate steelbooks now. They're a pain in the ass. They obviously don't fit in with the rest of my collection, and that's like one of the only things I feel OCD about, is everything looking uniform on a DVD rack. So we're at a point where steelbooks suck to me. I'm sure not to all of you. Some of you still like steelbooks, but steelbooks have become relatively uncommon too these days. But then when you look at collector's editions, most of the collector's edition stuff is digital content. Hell, even if you look at the legendary edition of Halo 5, that came with a download copy of the game. I'm kind of alright with that at this point. And obviously, I don't think like companies like Target are really damaging GameStop sales. And GameStop is the #1 video game retailer that is only selling video games. Walmart still sells more video games than GameStop as a whole, but GameStop is the only company that sells the amount that they do in video game only. Now, keep in mind too, though, GameStop's also the only large, big video game retailer left. because they bought out all their competition and now they're going to drown them with them. But I really don't foresee physical being able to outrun digital for too much longer. A big part of the reason why digital copies are still priced brand new at the same price as a retail copy is because they've stated they didn't want to piss off their retail partners. So GameStop's also the reason why you're still paying full price day of release for a digital copy of a game. I shouldn't just say GameStop, but GameStop obviously being one of the largest sellers of video games is a big part of it. They're also one of the largest sellers of gaming hardware. So it is part of it. We do need them to sell our hardware. We do want to keep a good relationship with them. If GameStop were to decide to not carry your game due to something you decided to do or piss them off, it would hurt your game. Like, you wouldn't sell as many copies now just because you put a stick up GameStop's ass. So, I don't know. I don't foresee I don't foresee GameStop staying alive much longer, and I don't foresee physical maintaining as much of a presence as what it has. I understand that all companies want to reach the largest audience they can, but look at how long it took Rocket League to release on a disc from when it released digitally. And I mean, you can look at that way with a lot of indie games. They only release a physical copy, mostly for collectors and people who absolutely hate digital downloads. But again, the number of people that are buying their games digitally goes up like 20% every year. So we're pretty much there. We're pretty much in a digital future. So guys, I would love to hear your opinions about this. Down in the comments down below, you can tell me how terrible of a human being I am for buying digital games and how I don't own them and whatever fear-mongering opinion you have down there. Just kidding. I understand where some of you do like physical, and I understand a lot of the pros to it. But trust me, when you have kids, you'll prefer digital. Guys, thanks for watching. I'm going to have plenty more content coming for you. Don't forget to ring that bell too, for that way you'll know the next time that I decide to bitch about GameStop. Thanks for watching. I'm going to have plenty more content coming. Did I ever say this part? I might have already said that part. We'll see you all soon.